Okay, so I just removed the stock valves, and you can see in the chambers here on the intake side, it's dirty and there's a little bit of rust there, but nothing too concerning. And on the exhaust port side, you can just see it's caked with carbon, which I'll have to clean out. And if you look at the valves themselves, the exhaust valve here is just caked with carbon. Even the intake valve is very dirty. So that's why they weren't sealing all that well, so it's good we're going through this exercise of replacing the valves. The valve stem seals were pretty dry, rotted, and cracked, so it's good that I pulled those out. We've got a brand new pair of valves here to go in place of those valves. We use the stock springs, nothing wrong with those, and the retainers. And of course, valve stem seals as well in the upper gasket set that I have. So probably go ahead and take 10 or 20 thousandths fly cut off the surface of this head before we put it back together, clean that up, make sure it's nice and true and flat, and add just a hair compression as well. Alright, so we got the cylinder head mounted up on the mill, and I've got some blue die chem on the surface so we can see where we've cut and where we haven't. Got the head and fly cutter set right at the surface of the part, and we're going to mill this thing. So we're at the control, run, start, go, and we'll set the spindle on. And we're done. And I think the head looks beautiful, perfectly smooth and flat. Couldn't ask for better. Nice fly cut. Got the whole surface. Ended up taking about 12 thou off the surface from the original thickness. So we should be in really good shape. Probably bumped the compression just a little bit and cleaned everything up for a solid, tight head gasket mating surface. Now just get it off the machine, get it cleaned off, and I can reinstall the fresh valves. Alright, since completing the machining work on the head, a few things came in for the engine here, and that is we got the new timing chain. So it turns out the original one stuck up here was stretched out, and it was at max adjustment, which is why it jumped off the sprocket. So 10 bucks, new timing chain, we'll install that. We got this gold colored chain just for, I guess, appeal, but more importantly, if you see here, this chain says it's pre-stretched with anti-fatigue, and it is also 150 links of chain. We probably have some left over, but there is only one master link with this set, which is right here. So I may have to get another master link, because if we are going to run two chains, I need two links. But that's okay. Should be easy enough to come by another master link. It's a 520 chain, nice heavy duty motorcycle chain. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just a few more things, and we're waiting on some more packages. But tonight the focus is going to be on this head. We're going to attempt to reinstall the brand new valves with the valve springs and retainers and all of that. There is a lot of tension on these springs, so it is kind of a challenge to install these things, but we'll have a go at it and we'll see what happens. Here we go. Alright, so we've got the cylinder head here, and we're going to install the new valves. And I've got the valves here, okay, along with this little tool that I made to compress the valve springs and to be able to reach in and put the retainers on. I'll show you that when we get there. Got a couple of pieces, little squares of cardboard that I cut to use under the clamp when I hold the valves in place. I've got the original intake side dual valve springs and retainers. I've got the original exhaust side valve springs and retainers, and I've got this brand new complete upper gasket kit. So we're going to dive in there and get these little guys, which are the valve stem seals, and we'll use those. The rest of this kit will probably hold off until we actually reassemble the head. So set that aside. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take the little valve stem seals, and we're just going to drop them into this little cap full of oil. Get them lubed up a bit. Okay, and then we can take these valve stem seals and just kind of wiggle them on in place like so. Simple as that. Pops right on. Same thing on the other side. Click and just kind of spin it, make sure it's seated properly. We got new valve stem seals. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the valves themselves, cut them back out of the plastic that I sealed them in, and we're going to lube up these valves. Okay, take a little more of the oil, put it all over the stem, back side of the face. Okay, and then this is the intake side, which is the larger of the two valves. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick that on this side. Okay, right up through the valve stem seal. Okay, and the stem seal kind of holds it in place too. It's got a nice snug fit. And then we do the same thing with the exhaust valve stem or valve. Okay, just lube it all up, and we flip this over, slide it into that port, and pops in place, and again kind of holds it right in there. Okay, you can see those sitting nice. And now that those are in there, now comes the tricky part. Now we're going to have to position this in such a way that we can put the clamp onto the valve and hold the spring so that we can set the retainers. Alright, so the first thing you want to do when you're installing these is decide which one you're going to do first, the intake or the exhaust. I'm going to start with the intake valve. So you see these little washers here. This larger one sets down over this, sits down in the groove in the bottom there. You can see that, the lighting isn't the best. And then you've got this dual spring assembly. You've got one small spring inside the larger spring, and you're just going to set those on top of the valve stem, okay, like that. And now the next step will be to set this retainer on top of that assembly, and we need to compress this so that the spring is low enough that we can install these two little retaining clips around the stem, and then we'll release the tension on the valve spring to lock those keepers in place. Okay, so let's get the clamp set up. We're going to use a piece of cardboard on the back side on top of the valve so that we don't damage the valve, and we'll clamp this down and put the retainers on. Alright, this is extremely difficult to see, especially at the angle you're at, but I've got these little retainers here and they're half cone shaped. You want to put the smaller part of the cone towards the bottom, which is going to lock the retainer in place. If you put a little grease or Vaseline or something on these, it helps to hold them in place. I've got this little window inside that cut piece of conduit that I mentioned so that I can reach in and try to position the retainer onto the shaft. And of course I missed. Good idea to have a magnet handy. The retainers are in place and I'm about to start releasing the spring tension on the clamp. I'm going to go nice and slow, and hopefully those retainers will stay seated and clamp the retainer into place. Alright, so of course, as usual, the camera battery died right in the middle of me recording and I didn't realize it, so I finished installing the spring and retainers in the head, and so you can see that they're all back into place, and you can see the bottom of the valves there, intake and exhaust. So pretty much ready to reinstall the head now. It is the next day. I didn't realize until today when I was checking the video that the battery had died and I didn't actually capture as much as I had hoped, but that's the finished product, so we're going to wrap this up until we're ready to reinstall it. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to subscribe for future videos and updates.